Welcome to What is Reality and Through the Looking Glass. This is the second of this year's public lecture series. I'm the chair for tonight's event and my name is Andrew Ward. Now, our three speakers can be seen to represent intellectual traditions that blew apart the prevailing, comfortable and fundamental assumptions about what reality really is. Particle physics, psychoanalysis and critical literary theory, each in their different ways, destabilized reality as a concept and overturned once and for all the idea that predominated British intellectual history since David Hume. And this was the notion that it is through observation that reality becomes available. In the wake of these intellectual movements, seeing is believing was no longer a tenable stance. Rather, reality becomes available through mathematics, uncovered through analysis, or exposed through deconstruction. The world was never going to appear quite the same again. But is this claiming too much? Is it not the case that normatively, in our everyday lives, we as ordinary agents proceed as if Hume was right and our senses rule? Certainly there are brave souls who offer definitions of what is reality that suggest this is indeed the case. Hence we're told, for example, that reality is the state of things as they actually exist, rather than as they may appear or might be imagined. But we do not have to be a particle physicist, a psychoanalyst, or a critical literary theorist to know that this does not stack up as a definition. Surely to say reality is what actually exists is just a tautology, saying the same thing twice. And if our imaginings are unreal, what are they? After all, it is our imaginings that mark us out as being human. They are the basis of science and the basis of the arts, as well as even as something mundane as organizational life. Whilst with regard to our dreams and fantasies, whatever anyone says, they are certainly real to us. All this tells us that even us ordinary agents know that reality is a problematic idea. How then should we think of reality? Well, this is what my colleagues will present to us in a moment. But for me, as someone who is not a professional academic, I like the remark of Ian Forster made when he was sick of people telling him to face reality. How can we face reality, he said, when reality is all around us? And when Stevie Smith tells us, I was much further out than you thought, and not waving, but drowning, she is telling us just how wrong our sense of reality can be. I love the research into illusory superiority. From two surveys in the 80s, we learned that 93% of drivers sampled in the US said they were above average drivers. The figure was 80% for drivers in Britain and 69% for those in Sweden. But what's really fascinating about those figures, if we look at the data for fatalities through car accidents per population, it is in fact the best drivers are the Swedish, the Brits are in the middle, and the Americans are actually worse. We know that reality must be up for grabs when soap opera actors receive wedding gifts when their characters marry, propositions when their characters are abandoned, and death threats when the plot line takes their character down dark and sinister paths. We can learn a lot from work done by Dorothy Hobson in the beginning of the 80s into the soap opera Crossroads. In the home she researched, the men said they never watched the program, while the women said they did. Whilst in reality, the women were making the tea, doing the ironing, and other housework when the program was on, whilst it was the men who were in front of the TV when Crossroads was being played. And speaking of the media, I'm sure Baudrillard is right. Now there's a line for you. The media has become hyper-real for us. Representations on the media become the ultimate reality against which we measure the reality of what directly happens to us. So people who witness or experience a car crash make sense of it through saying, it's just like what happens in the movies, rather than the other way around. At the heart of the positions our speakers tonight will adopt is a radically different understanding of language. Just as observation goes out of the window as a surefire way of determining reality, the idea that language is somehow contingent on or mirrors reality is also abandoned. Rather, there will be common ground between psychoanalysis and critical literary theory in a recognition that we construct our reality in and through language. But a similar notion is also reflected in the Danish physicist Niels Bohr's remark that it is wrong to think that the task of physics is to find out what nature is. Rather, physics concerns what we say about nature. And what seems to be the same idea appears in Stephen Hawking's much more recent concept of model-dependent realism. He tells us that there is no model-independent test of reality. Rather, a well-constructed model creates a reality all of its own. But when a leading particle physicist tells us on mainstream TV that he would eat his pants if the neutrino is shown to exist, and proceeds to wave around said pants for all to see, we're not just talking about an amusing gimmick, we're witnessing a scientist who is telling us, in an extraordinarily unscientific manner, that he knows what reality really is. So let me now introduce to you someone who is working hard to ensure that Professor Al-Khalili does indeed have to eat his pants. Professor Akram Khan is Professor of Experimental Particle Physics here at Brunel. He is a world-leading researcher in both fundamental and applied research. Akram read mathematics and theoretical physics for his bachelor's degree at St Andrews University, undertaking his PhD in experimental particle physics at the University College London. Akram was a European Research Fellow at CMAT in Spain and at CERN in Switzerland. He was then a Senior Research Fellow in Edinburgh and Manchester universities, going on to obtain a faculty position at Stanford University before joining us here at Brunel in 2003. Akram has published extensively in a wide range of key academic journals. He has also worked in most of the leading national and international laboratories in the world, including DESI in Germany, SLAC in the USA, as well as, of course, the CERN at Switzerland. Akram's recent research has been addressing the fundamental questions: what is the difference between matter and antimatter, and what new exotic physics processes might help us to address the existing inadequacies of the standard model. In the field of applied science, he is working on developing a novel particle cancer therapy machine in the UK, which will revolutionize the treatment of cancer. And oh yes, in his spare time, he's busy at work developing the next generation of internet technologies. Akram also serves, and this is probably his most onerous task, on the organizing group for this public lecture series. So without further ado, can I introduce you Professor Akram Khan.
Thank you very much.